today's topic is understanding mental health and wellness. This pinnacle discussion is webinar is organized in association with Directorate of Foreign Students, Goa University. We are very pleased to have with us as special invitee Dr. Rajesh Dume. Dr. Rajesh Dume sir is a senior psychiatrist with the government of Goa, currently deputed at North Goa District Hospital, Mapsa. He has previously been a member of Goa Health Task Force. He's also a master trainer recognized by Government of India in substance abuse prevention, and suicide prevention. Thank you, sir, for being with us and giving us your valuable time. Then we have Professor Rahul Tripathi. Professor Rahul Tripathi is head of the Department of Political Science and director of Directorate of Foreign Students Cell of Goa University. Professor Rahul Tripathi is someone who has dealt with student issues on various levels, especially foreign students who consider him as a guardian figure in Goa, and is one of the very few persons in Goa University that you will find that his door is always open for students and students dealing with any issues during their academic career. So apart from this, we also have Rochelle Pereira, who's an assistant professor at Rachel Seminary, who's also consultant at Auspice Hospital. So there are many people who might be like her, who's an expert in this kind of field, who will be taking questions in the course of this discussion. So if there are any doctors or any other experts, you may please identify yourself and you may answer any of the questions that may come after this, over the course of this discussion. So for those who are attending our discussion for the first time and who don't know what is Pinnacle. Pinnacle is a students club created by Goa University students, and as part of its activities, Pinnacle has hosted discussions and debate on many topics relevant to our society and our academic community. Pinnacle was founded in 2018, and since then we have tried to make our presence felt as a students' body in Goa University. Pinnacle discussions were always used to be held in classrooms in different departments of Goa University. However, since the lockdown, we have begun this webinar series. First webinar discussion was on reimagining scenario in Goa, and then we had a migrant labors and Goa's political economy discussion. And today's discussion that is quite sensitive but equally important, that is mental health and wellness. So I once again welcome all of you for this discussion, all the attendees as well as our distinguished speakers. And I now invite Professor Rahul Tripathi to set the ball rolling and take this webinar forward. Over to you, Professor Rahul Tripathi.
Thank you, Ramrai. Welcome, Dr. Dume. It's always a pleasure to see you. Also, welcome to all the students and friends from all walks of life from Goa and elsewhere. Ever since Pinnacle has become a webinar, our reach has increased. So in that sense, we are very happy to see the expanding reach. While Pinnacle is consistently supported by the Department of Political Science, Goa University, this time I specifically felt that let the Directorate of Foreign Students be associated with it in its official capacity for a very special reason, that Directorate of Foreign Students is very, very actively involved in ensuring that a lot of foreign students who are there in Goa University and also in the colleges basically find themselves in an environment which is safe for them, both emotionally and physically. And this necessity increased all the more during the COVID times. Unlike our local students who have had a family backup here, they are away from their families. So in that sense, a lot of issues to which we have got exposed in the last 2-3 months, but also in my own capacity as a teacher at Goa University, I felt that there are issues relating to mental health, anxiety, depression that I think need to be discussed threadbare. And I had been thinking of having this for a long time. So I'm happy when this opportunity came, and I requested Dr. Dume, who I regard as a very close friend, who has always come to my help whenever I have needed support on these issues, and he very readily agreed. So I'm very happy to welcome Dr. Dhume. When I spoke to him, he said that unlike general academic lectures, this lecture would serve its purpose well if he gives his opening remarks, and also a set of questions had already reached him, so that helps him to set the tone for discussion. But he would like this discussion to be interactive. So he would be very happy to receive specific questions from individuals, students. In case for some reason students do not want to ask a question, they can always send in their question to Ramrai through WhatsApp or through the chat box. So in that sense, he would very much want this session to be interactive. So welcome again, Dr. Dhume. I leave now the floor open to you. Over to you, Dr. Dhume.
Thank you, Professor. And it's indeed a way, it's very heartening to sit in front of you, which is not something that I usually do. I sit in front of patients. And this COVID times has taken us completely by surprise. There are no set rules. There are no set ideals. But if I were to tell you, friends, I'm very happy to be associated with the Pinnacle Students Club and the Directorate of Foreign Students, and of course, my friend Rahul Tripathi, for having thought of bringing mental health to the foray. Because if we and when we capture COVID and put him back into his box, we will still have to deal with unemployment, sadness, loss of families, loss of people in the family. It's going to be a horrific time for all of us. And this is probably the time where we need to hold each other. We need to be supportive. So if I were to call Ramrai one fine day and I would say to him that, you know what, Ramrai, I don't feel hungry anymore. I go to sleep, but I don't get sleep. I get this negative thinking that keeps coming to my mind. The first thing is that what is going to happen? Am I going to survive? Is my near and dear ones going to survive? I don't feel like going to work. I don't feel like seeing my patients. I don't feel like doing anything. I just feel like curling up like a ball with my quilt over me, and just, would that be called chilling? I don't think so. I will probably somewhere in my own cocoon. I will then feel worthless, probably useless, and then a whole foray of negative thinking comes coming to my mind. Am I depressed? Maybe. So just to tell you something, before telling you about depression, what is important for us to know is depression is not a sign of weakness, my friends. It's an illness like diabetes, hypertension, asthma, and depression can affect anyone. It doesn't see class, creed, caste, religion. It doesn't see your economic standing. It doesn't see your gender. It doesn't say anything. 1 in 5 of us will suffer from depression at any given time in our lifetime. Females are twice as more susceptible to the illness of depression as much as males would. And like WHO would say that many years back, almost 10, 12 years back, WHO said that, you know what, come 2020, we'll have a depressive epidemic. And lo, hold and behold, we have it right now. Nobody told us that COVID was coming. Nobody told us that COVID will throw us off into a uncharted territory. Depression is a common mental illness and it affects person's thoughts, feelings, behavior, relationships, performance at work, and in very severe cases, it leads to suicide. So, if we were to ask, there are some questions here that Professor Rahul had sent me, many of whom have got a flavor of depression. And therefore, some of you have asked what are the symptoms of depression, some of you have asked some other question. We'll go step by step as we answer these questions. But before that, as a composite package, let me tell you that depression is not sadness. Depression is everything put together. So what is this everything put together? So I have a list here which I will read out. And I don't know if you have got access to a paper and a pen. If you are having that, let's be open with each other and jot down some points. So here goes. Feeling low, sad most of the time. Now I'll just digress here and tell you that all of us feel low and sad sometimes. That is thought to be normal. So how would you know if a person has been sad and points towards depression? If this sadness is present from morning to evening, every day for around 15 days, then probably you should put up the red flag and say that, could it be depression? Then, loss of interest and difficulty in completing daily activities. Feeling tired easily and feeling lack of energy throughout the day. Now, some of you might already be swarming in your seats and saying, "Are, ye makasam hua." I thought this is something that we have. But remember, it has to be continuously there for at least 15 days. Inability to enjoy things that you found interesting earlier. And as students, difficulty in concentrating. You don't feel like doing those things that you really felt like doing. Like probably reading a book, you start looking at the book, you start reading the book, and then say, "Che." That sort of a feeling comes up. The other thing that happens and that really hits people below the belt is that a bubbling, happy, confident person suddenly starts feeling low, sad, bad. As if you have a sinkhole and you try to, that's what patients tell me. Doctor, I felt that there is this whirlpool and I was just going round and round and then it suddenly sucked me into and I went down. It's a very empty feeling that comes within you and it gives you something like an emotional pain. And then when you are down there, you get negative thoughts. You feel that, what, I'm not really worth living. Why do you keep friendship with a goddamn person like me? You should go your way, I'm not really worth it. These are some of the things that people can also experience. Then, as you go down deeper into depression, people would start unnecessarily feeling guilty for things they might have done, a very small thing. You know what? I should not have pulled Lata's choti in 5th standard. There's no connection right now. Lata is married and she's got 2 children. Nevertheless, you delve into your own past, take something that you did negative and hold yourself responsible in today's time. Those are guilt feelings. I should not have spoken to my mother in that tone. I should not have done this. See, I'm very, very bad. So depression is not only sadness or feeling low or feeling like crying. Depression is all of these things put together as a package. So that in COVID times, I'm also forgetful. So I made a list of some things that I would like to read. And from that deep feeling of helplessness, hopelessness, and then worthlessness, you don't really feel like integrating with the society. And now, take this mindset and place it in lockdown. You had one, now there is one more. So in Konkani, there is a saying, it says, Dushkala Terao Moino, which means in a famine, there is the 13th month coming up. We had 1 month, 1 year of famine. Now in this year, there is a 13-month year, so to say. So we have this situation in which freedom was taken away from us. Social interactions were taken away from us. Interactions became very like this, electronic. I couldn't hug and cry. I can't meet my friend. I can't speak to him. He can't put his arm around my hand and say that, it's okay, buddy, chill. It's going to happen. It's going to take its time. You're going to be well. We know how you are. It's just a phase. Nobody can give this dilasa to anybody. So some of you will ask me, what are the causes of depression? I'll hold here at the causes because the causes are not one. The causes are many. One of the main things that all of us face is the cause, what we call as stress. So I'm really stressed out. What does stress mean? If you can put your mics on now, unmute yourself, I would like to ask a question so that we try and be on the same plane. Anyone can give me an answer saying that what do you mean by stress? Yeah, anybody? What according to you is what's your philosophy of stress? Anyone? Suraj, Silfa, or Nathan? I can see Vaishali. Anyone? What is your concept of stress? Okay, so if I really want to, now I want you to go onto a journey onto the causative reason so that all of you understand why are we worried about stress, which can lead to depression, right? So, sorry. So when we are born, psychologically, if any one of you has taken psychology and studied a bit of it, you'd be able to understand that our books tell us, yeah, Ravi, thanks for joining. Our books tell us that there's something called as a trait of anxiety, TRAIT, and a state of anxiety, STATE. The trait of anxiety is what we are born with, in the sense that they all say that, an anxious mother begets an anxious child. Then we go on to the paradigm of, is this, nature or is this nurture? But that apart, we talk about a trait of anxiety. There are people who are anxious by their personality. And then there are people who get into a state of anxiety because of the state around them. So you have a trait of anxiety which is within you, and then you have a state of anxiety which could be induced in you. Remember this. Now, when you say a state of anxiety being induced in you, there are two aspects to this thing. One, induced within you because of some chemical locha, which we call as endogenous depression, which means that which is caused because of a chemical imbalance. And I'll come to that in a short while. Chemical imbalance in your brain. What's the neurochemical? Serotonin. What happens when there is low serotonin? You have symptoms of depression. There are various reasons why serotonin goes down. One of the major one is serotonin goes down when you are stressed. The second one that we can say is one is the serotonin lack, which is the endogenous depression. And the exogenous depression is all the factors that you anticipate, you encounter going ahead in your life. Your relationships, your employment, your employee, the teachers, your curriculum, your exams, your interviews, your layoffs, your breakups, everything induces a stress reaction on us. We hold here. We have done one part journey, second part journey. Now, what does this actually mean in our brain? What happens is very simple. There are two types of stress. One is called as eustress, EU stress, and the other one is called as the distress or the disturbing stress. Now, eustress is what all of us go through. And eustress is essential for the functioning of the human body. When you are going to start a 100 meters race, you don't do a cold start. You warm up. When you're warming up, what are you doing? You're bringing a chemical up in your body. And what is that chemical? Adrenaline or epinephrine. What does the adrenaline do? Adrenaline tries to make your body capable of taking the stress. So here am I doing my warm-up, getting very jittery, and then I stand on the line and I move my hands, loosen my hands and take a stance, and then on the starting block, start my 110 meters sprint. Why did I have to do this? Because I cannot do a cold start. I have to bring my body up to a particular level so that I can function effectively and take care of the race, which is a stress on the body. So this is eustress. I have put a significant amount of stress to prepare my body to take on the race, which is my goal. So any goal-directed stress is called as eustress. It's perfectly normal for all of us, because if we didn't have eustress, we would have been lolling in the bed and saying that chalta hai, jo hoga wo dekha jayega, blah 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 and XYZ. Somebody is presenting. Yeah, all right. So sorry. Where was I? Yeah, we were on eustress. Now come to distress. Before coming to distress, you have to understand something. The human race is capable of doing something called as imagined stress, or what we call as anticipatory stress. What is anticipatory stress? Exams are around the corner, and then you say, what if that chapter, a question comes which I've left for choice? What if? And then you keep on thinking, so what if this will happen? What if that will happen? So what are you doing? You're mentally trying to get into some sort of a race. What does the body do? It releases adrenaline. What does adrenaline do? Adrenaline is a positive hormone released by the adrenal cortex, right sitting on top of your kidneys. It does release adrenaline. The moment adrenaline gets released, what happens? You have palpitation. The heart rate increases, the breathing increases, your muscles become tense, your body heat increases, and in your mind, you get a sense of restlessness coming in. You feel restlessness. It can be seen. If you put out your hand and you're really very excited, you can see tremors. That's the adrenaline thing. We call it the adrenaline rush. So this is what happens when you're in acute stress. Now this can be also saying that, hello, you've been summoned to the principal's office. He says, what did I have? What happened? What happened? What happened? What happened? What happened? You get very nervous. That's a state of anxiety. That's a state of anxiety because of stress. Now imagine that I have a court matter wherein somebody has given me, put an allegation onto me, a thing that I have not done. Something as serious as a molestation or XYZ or whatever. Now I have to go to the police, stressful, court, stressful. I constantly start thinking about this stress. Adrenaline is a very short-lasting hormone. Once the goal is achieved, adrenaline is broken down and passed out through the urine. Nothing remains in this. That's called as the cooling down. Now suppose I have this imagined stress in my mind. What will happen? What will happen? What will happen? What will happen? We keep on stimulating the adrenal cortex to release more and more adrenaline. And then we get symptoms and signs of what we call as anxiety. And in anxiety, what do you have? You have sweaty feeling, you have rumbling tummies, you have excessive breathing, your breathing becomes shallow, your breathing becomes, your pulse becomes very high, you feel very hot, you feel your neck muscles, the small neck muscles go into spasm, and then you have neck pain, or you have back pain, you have headaches, you have a dry mouth, you don't feel like eating. This is a stress-related disorder. Now, suppose this court case goes on for endlessly, as many court cases go on. If such a thing happens, the body says, boss, every time this fellow thinks, should I be bringing up this short-lasting chemical? The body says, no, it's not really possible for me to keep on shooting adrenaline day in and day out. So you know what? Let us reset this guy's anxiety status. Now, constant release of adrenaline goes to the brain, goes to a system called as the hippocampus, which is our center for emotions. And from there, a hormone is released. That hormone releases another hormone, and the other hormone releases something called as corticosteroids or cortisol. Now, cortisol is a messing hormone. Like all steroids, cortisol is the natural steroid. When the natural steroid starts getting into our system then starts getting reset to a higher level of function. This is, boss, every time I bring the heart rate to 60, I have to bring it out to 100, 60 to 100. Why don't I bring it once for all and keep it high? So it brings up, because of corticosteroids, your every parameter comes up. And by this time, several years have passed that you have been in the acute stress because of that court case. And now my stress has converted from an acute stress into a chronic stress. When do you call it a chronic stress? When the body's response is no longer adrenaline, but body's response is cortisol oriented. And once you get there, my dear friends, once you get there, you stay there. There is no way by which you can immediately reduce that cortisol. What does cortisol do then? It gives you stress diabetes, stress cholesteremia. Your stress hormones are increased. So you have high blood glucose, high sugars, hypertension, sleep disturbances, you don't sleep well, you have body ache, headaches, back pain, tingling sensation in your hands. So this is something that happens in our body when we are in the chronic stress. And if you read on Google or in Wikipedia, if you read about corticosteroid, it will say corticosteroid is equal to depression. Because a steroid has got effect on our emotions. And serotonin, as we were talking about, is the precursor of adrenaline. If my system keeps on making adrenaline, I have no serotonin left in my brain circuits. That's how depression comes about. So, is there something wrong, Dr. Rahul sir, with my audio?
No, your audio is fine, sir.
All right.
You can go ahead. I think there is
All right.
some issue with the audio of the user. Yeah.
All right. So now, what would you do about how would you diagnose depression? The diagnosis of depression essentially means these symptoms being present for this amount of times. And what are the symptoms? Feeling low, sad, loss of interest, tiring easily, lack of energy, inability to enjoy, poor concentration, lack of self-confidence, negative thought, loss of appetite, feeling guilty, unworthy, disturbed sleep, lack of interest, experiencing body aches, and feeling suicidal. All right. So this is where depression is, and you diagnose it also very clinically. But remember that many people in today's times put up a different face in public and put up a different face at home. Hence, a lot of depression remains hidden. Many a times, we diagnose depression through other ancillary symptoms that come up. And what are those ancillary symptoms? You can see excessive smoking, excessive drinking, abusive behavior, irritability. Mostly seen, then in children, you see truancy, you see naughty things, you see all the other things that is probably seen in. So depression remains, hidden. Many of us, just smile and do not share our own problems. Why do we not share? Because we have this feeling that this cannot occur to me. Why me? No. This something, depression and me? No. But then depression affects everyone. Its presentation varies from people to people. Its extent of suffering varies from people to people. And people to people have a different ways in which they can cope with depression. The other thing is stigma. When something is related to mental health, we say that my neighbor has it, but I don't. Because accepting that one has a mental health problem is pretty stigmatizing, because the way that people look at you, they feel that, this is, ye kuch kaam kar raha nahi, that type of attitude comes in. This is stigma. And sometimes that's the reason why I compare depression with diabetes or hypertension. And yes, it's as much a lifestyle illness as diabetes and depression, diabetes and hypertension is, or probably heart problems, or cholesterol problems, or arthritis, or asthma is. Except the target organ is different. Here, the mind or the brain is the target organ. The other target organs are self-explanatory. So, what do you do about treatment of depression? The number one thing that we need to do about treatment of depression is to identify it. The faster you identify it, faster can you intervene. And what was the intervention? In mild to moderate intervention is nothing but sitting together, opening yourself up and talking about your problems. In a process called venting, when you allow a person to talk out, the pain sort of goes away. But in COVID times, that's only possible through this type of a medium. So fair enough, psychiatry has moved from a personal dimension to a digital platform now. So we have something called as telepsychiatry now. And you can talk to your counselor, talk to your therapist, and you can actually see him talk. Or you have the phone call. But please express your innermost feelings to people and let go of the feeling that, they'll judge me. I mean, would they judge you if you were to say that, I've got diabetes? Would they judge you? Then why do you think that they will judge you when you say that you've got depression? In 2020, we need to overcome this stigma, which is now prevalent all over the world. And in COVID times, it's a bigger pandemic than COVID itself. If you have a problem and your depression is really major depression, you probably need medication. And the medication that we give is called as the antidepressant medications. There are 40 types of antidepressant medications. We will not go into that. But suffice to understand here that the medication that is used is not habit forming and does not give you an instantaneous cure. And why doesn't it give you an instantaneous cure? Because it's not like a toothache. It's a process that has got deranged. It's a level that has fallen. Can you imagine a dry riverbed? Can you fill it? Really fill it? For it to really fill, you need X amount of days of rainfall. Then you could probably bring it up and your reservoirs get filled. So for the brain reservoirs to get filled, when you try to give an antidepressant, it shows no effect for the first 3 to 4 weeks. So people feel, I'm taking the medication, but I'm not just getting well. You won't get well. You won't get well so soon. Your levels are so low that for you to feel well, it has to come to a particular level. It has to come to at least ground zero. That takes time. And during this time, a person has to be supported by family, by friends, by lovers, by whoever. But he needs to be supported and you need to reassure him that things are going to get better. So we've got 40 different types of medications, each having its different effect. But the ultimate goal is to repair the hypo level of serotonin in your brain. At this point, I also want to tell you that depression, like diabetes, runs in the family. Now go back and remember, didn't I say trait anxiety? I said trait anxiety, that it runs in the family. An anxious mother begets an anxious child. It runs in the family. So your hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis runs in the family. So if you have an anxious family, the chances of depression in that family is significantly higher, like it's a diabetic person in a diabetic family. So it's very much understandable that depression is like any other chronic physical illness. And like any other chronic physical illness, it has a control. You cannot cure depression because it is not caused by an organism. We can cure something that is caused by an organism. We can cure malaria because we kill the falciparum. There's no malaria. But can you cure a heart attack? You can prevent the next one, but you can't prevent. You can't sort of kill the heart attack germ, so to say. So here we are. Depression is a mental illness. Depression is the most common mental illness. Depression occurs because of various reasons. Symptoms of depression are what are well known. Diagnosis is by very good observation and discussing and talking. Once you diagnose, you have to do an intervention. If it is mild and moderate, you can do set therapies. And then in some people, you need to tinker their brain with specific therapies called as cognitive behavior therapies. Cognitive behavior therapy, CBT as it's called, or RET, rational emotive therapy as it's called, tries to change the way you think. Especially in this family which has got an anxiety problem, it's very important for us to change the way we think. So they say, नजरिया अगर बदलोगे तो जग सुधरेगा. So if you can try to change the way you look at the world, things might be different. Okay? And one of the biggest and the most fearful thing for us is suicide. Sometimes I feel the suicide is a permanent action for a permanent solution for a temporary problem. And if we reach on time, then we could probably hold hands. We can take a minute and we can save a life. Okay, so this is what I wanted to place before you as the full gamut of how we discuss this. Now, Ramrai, we can take on the questions, or how do we go about it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Professor Rahul will be taking questions. Yeah.
Right. So, can I go through the list that Professor Rahul has given me, or how do I do that? Or would people like to ask questions?
So there is one question.
Yeah.
In the chat box. How does one handle mentally ill person before receiving professional help?
If I can,
Yeah,
Professor Rahul.
if I can just add one more line to this, because my question also would have been linked to this, is that there is a certain stage where depression would require medical intervention, and there is a stage that will lead up to that stage. So probably that is the stage where the family member or the person who is immediate to the person would have to judge that, okay, now I feel that he has reached a stage where he does require a medical intervention or a professional help. So how do we know that, okay, we have reached a stage where I think counseling doesn't help, personal counseling doesn't help, but he requires a professional help? So these two you can take together.
All right. So, it will first depend on the person. Now, take for example somebody who has completely lost his or her appetite. He's not eating, he's not drinking, he's sort of given up, not because he doesn't want to eat, but he doesn't feel like eating. Now, this person, if he doesn't eat for 1 or 2 days, you try to cajole him, you try to tell him, please have something. If you don't want a piece of bread, have some rice, or have some this, or have some that. Still, things are not really moving. These are some of the things that will damage other aspects of life, in the sense that if the heart is racing so much that the person is becoming very breathless, the anxiety is so much and overwhelming that he has something called as panic attacks. Now, these itself will manifest in such a way that you would probably need to get some sort of emergency help, and many a times depression gets diagnosed when such type of things occur. For example, people are brought saying that the person has not been eating anything for the last 8 days, and then we hospitalize the patient. Once we talk, we know that the person is depression because we start them on pines or whatever, so to support life. Then the other way where people reach is, people go doctor shopping, in the sense that this is happening, that is happening, nobody can give me relief, and then ultimately they get referred to us for backaches, for neck pains. And when we find out from the history, we find out that there's an underlying depression. You treat the depression, everything vanishes. So there's a technical limit. I would say if person really refusing to eat, if a person is really unable to get up, even to take his own, go to the toilet or have a bath, person is so much that he's tearful and crying all the time and talking about ending life, that is an emergency. You need to bring the person for medical attention. The other thing is feeling of giddiness, loss of consciousness. These people also need to be brought for medical attention. So there may be a lot of physical issues that bring about intractable headache, which leads to vomiting, which leads to, because a lot of anxiety leads to acidity, and a lot of acidity leads to, lack of appetite and gastric problems and stuff like that. Do I answer your question, Professor?
Yes. And then allow me to just ask one more question on behalf of the Directorate of Foreign Students, and then that will be my last question. One very peculiar situation we have been now facing is that in a hostel-like environment, there are many students who are away from home. Now, for foreign students, it's like being in a kind of a double jeopardy because they are far, far away from their homes. We have many students from Afghanistan who actually come from conflict zones. So in that sense, I mean, what are the best coping mechanisms when the entire group around you, who is actually supposed to be the immediate backup, also is having similar problems? So I mean, as a group, if you have a common vulnerability, what would be the suggestion? Yeah.
I think if this is so, if you have a commonality in this, it's an unprecedented situation, and these students of yours might benefit from what is called as a group therapy, wherein a therapist sits with them and talks to them in person, probably with social distancing, uh, about their own problems. Once you start talking about the problems, a lot of venting occurs, and with vent, people do feel relief. Now it's factual that they're away from home. It's factual that there are no flights out. They're factual that we're in lockdown situations with corona everywhere else. It's a fearful situation for all of us. I mean, all so-called social functions have been stopped. So it's a very important thing for us. So I would suggest that you should probably have something like a group sessions for them, so that, or maybe they should be allowed to visit, but even that is not possible nowadays to our local people. I do not remember right time, Professor Rahul, but I think it was in Sweden or elsewhere that foreign students once a week was called over by a local person to have a tete-a-tete with the family, with the local family or the sponsoring family or something like that. You know? Like, I understand you're the guardian of many, but nevertheless, this is what I can think of just over the top my head. But it's a difficult situation.
Yeah. No, that's a good suggestion. Yeah. So that's all from my side. I mean, now we welcome everybody to join in.
I will just take these questions that somebody
Yes.
has asked me.
Sure.
The question is meditation have the ability to keep good mental health? And if yes, then how? As I was telling you, meditation is extremely useful in COVID times to take care of anxiety, specifically because when there was this complete lockdown, we could hear birds chirping and streams guggling and whatnot, because everything else was quiet. In that situation, one could hear his own breathing or his heartbeat. What we have done through our ancient texts, we can find out that in our brain, as I am talking to you, the rhythm in my brain, if I put something called as EEG, electroencephalography, you will get a very fast type of rhythm, which is called as the beta rhythm. It's the rhythm that means that there's a zoo, 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 zoo circuits that are just going about. Now, this chaos in my brain has to be limited and quietened down for me to feel restful. And the modality that human beings know of feeling restful is meditation. And in meditation, what happens is when you listen to calm music or listen to a particular song or zone yourself into a beautiful picture that you always loved, or listen to the nature and its sounds, the rhythm in my brain changes to a rhythm called as the alpha rhythm. And alpha rhythm is a very nice 7 cycles, frequency of 7 cycles per second, which is thought to be restful. It's like the peace cycle in your head. After which comes the delta and then the theta. Wherein the delta and theta are the sleep waves in the brain. That shows that the brain is asleep. But alert, awakening, and blissful or quietful, the rhythm is alpha rhythm. Meditation induces an alpha rhythm once you start practicing it regularly. Just sitting one day and meditating won't help. It's a lifestyle modification exercise mentally, and therefore you have to probably go on to a cycle of it. So yes, meditation does help, and it helps by inducing alpha waves in your brain. You can Google for what is called as alpha music. And that's what I tell my patients to do, my clients to do. And you could put into your head and try and listen to alpha rhythm if you're really agitated, angry, nervous, and it might significantly calm you down. All right, that's the answer to that question. Any relationship between psychological stress and physical health? Yes, like I told you, the HPA axis, when the cortisol gets released into a chronic stress situation, it starts doing steroid-induced damage to each organ. It attacks the liver, releases glucagon, leads to high glycemia, may lead to depression, diabetes. It increases your burning of fats, increases triglycerides, increases your cholesterol and triglycerides, leading to increased clogging of vessels. Cortisol narrows your vessels down, increases your blood pressure, and as it increases your blood pressure, you get hypertension. The cortisol also has an effect on the brain. It reduces your concentration, decreases your memory. And therefore, many of us, when they are very stressed, like in COVID times right now, we are often forgetful. So, mental, psychological stress has a direct impact on physical health. And when you have cortisol release or even adrenaline release, you have this reflux acidity that comes about. You have digestive problems. You may have loose motions, and that's called as the IBS, the irritable bowel syndrome, presents in various ways. All right, so that's the answer to any relationship between psychological stress and physical health. Yeah, what causes depression? We have answered this question. How do you know that you're actually depressed? We have answered this question too. How to mentally control depression? You cannot control depression mentally. You can control stress. And you have full stress management. We can have a workshop of stress management, life management, time management. These are the 3 ways by which you could, very easy for me to say, very difficult for people to follow because of your employment schedules, your timing schedules, your own personal issues. But if you do that, you really can manage stress. And if you can manage stress, then you can manage depression. Now, many of us have contemplated suicide, but once one is ready to take the step, what can save a person from committing suicide? Like I said, suicide is a permanent solution for a temporary problem. And therefore, we invest so much of our mental strength onto preventing suicide. Because once you have committed it, that's the end of the story. And those who suffer are the people who are left behind. The only way to, suicide could be a topic, Professor, if we would like to discuss about it, we could probably schedule something, a webinar on that, because it's a topic by itself. And it's very important that all youngsters understand how to prevent suicide, because it's about talking to that person and talking him down, giving him options in various ways, which is called as crisis intervention. So reaching out to a friend, a colleague, or calling a helpline. How many of you are aware that an NGO called Cooch Foundation runs a helpline? The number is 225-2525. 225-2525. So if you feel anxious, depressed, suicidal, and the thought comes, please call the helpline. It's free of cost. All right. So there's this question, how to deal with breakup in a lockdown situation. I think we can sort of take up this in a very small mini session sometime later, if the Pinnacle Club allows us to take this specific important things in the near future. All right. What could be the best way to help a person suffering from depression, keeping his mind Corona crisis? Yes, like we've already spoken about that. There's a very interesting question here: how to get emotional stability during the pandemic? Uh, that's a challenge, friends. That's really a challenge because working out of uh, COVID times ourselves, as I work for the government, it is extremely challenging for all of us with no holidays, with duties other than psychiatric duties, supervisory duties, collaborative duties, or some sort of. It's been a tiring time for all of us. But I feel that it's important to keep your connections on. If you cannot physically connect, you can connect on the phone through your video calls. See if you can, we think that when I pass out, I will do this, I will do that. There are many of our wishes and fancies that we do. Probably taking up a new hobby, learning a new skill helps some people. Dance, music is also important, and exercising is extremely important in COVID times because exercise releases a hormone called as endorphin, and endorphin is an effective killer of cortisol. So if you do not want your bodily steroid to start eating your systems, you should be probably exercising for about 45 minutes to an hour every day. Whatever it could be: Surya Namaskar, dumbbells, spot running, stretching, yoga, cycling, whatever you would probably like to do. But do some exercise so that endorphins help you cope with your situation. Right. So then there's one more thing. Why is it that people with so much pain hesitate to share it with anyone? Like we talked about stigma. We talked about stigma. We don't express ourselves because we don't like to be judged. We don't like to be called names. We don't like to be called weakling or a loser or stuff like that. So the other thing is confidentiality issues. If I were to bring out my innermost feelings to you, will you judge me? Will you keep it to yourself, or will you start spreading it? Will that mean that I will lose my self-respect, or I'll have a loss of name in society? That's what bothers people. And that's where counselors, the number one thumb rule of counseling is confidentiality. So counseling issues, confidentiality issues, and often sometimes confidence issues. Like, I really don't have the confidence to tell my problems to you. You have been asking me, but I don't have that energy to tell it to you. So that might be another reason. And sometimes we might feel the pain, but it's not easy to put emotions in words. It's easy for us to say, why didn't you tell me? But it's very difficult for people to put them in words. And probably that's the reason why, even though people are in pain, they just smile and say, no, everything is okay. When his eyes tells a different story, his face tells a different story, and that pastor's smile is just a plaster smile. So take a minute and save a life. It's best that we try and understand our friends and try and probe into their lives and see if you can give them a helping hand. Yeah, so I think Professor Rahul and Ramraj, this is where my day stands. Most of it is answered, and there are two things that we can take at a different session. There's one interesting question: when nothing seems to work in our favor for a long period of time, where do we find the will to survive? Difficult question to answer. Everyone will have a different answer. So I won't answer this question. It's for all of you friends to think about it. And probably one word comes to my mind. It's the word of hope. That we hope that we had a good day. And this hope can come from a lot of spirituality also, and a lot of understanding that there is something beyond us that always governs this universe. So that's where I am right now. If any more questions are coming in here from anyone, I mean, it's nice we could take it. There's some questions, Ramra, in the chat box I was seeing, but I haven't been able to. I'm not
Hello.
very net savvy that way to try and do that. So if you could help me with that.
Sir,
Let me just.
actually, I had one question, if I may ask, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, when we see our friends or our relatives post on social media some sad or some depressing kind of status updates, at what point, do we approach them if we don't really talk about such things with those people? At what point we know that, this is the right time for us to approach them and ask them what is.
See, if you ask me this question, the straight answer would be anytime Ramrai is the right time. Because anytime you want, you could probably ask that question and you say, would you like, you would say that, I've just seen your status thing, status that you have put. Is there some way I can probably help you? Maybe you'd like to talk to me about it or something like that. But that's what I meant by saying take a minute and save a life. Because sometimes that one approach of yours might help him think that, Are Ramrayan tari maka vicharle. Status gallo, kones vicharlo na. Nobody felt. The other way is there's a sense of anomaly in social media that people feel when they express. Sometimes we write on Facebook and express our feelings, our angers towards the establishment, towards X, towards Y, and then we take it off our chest, so to say. So maybe that's what they do, but it's always good to try and find out. But then I really wouldn't know how the friend will take it, but at least you have done your bit. Let me just see in this chat box if I can. Yeah.
We have one question from Aniket
Yeah.
Tamle.
What are the psychological
He's asking, what are the psychological tests done on a depressed person?
See, Aniket, there are many tests that are available to do, but one of the tests generally are done when we are doing some research study to evaluate the before and after effects. We have the Hamilton Depression Rating Scale, the Rorschach Depression Rating Scale. We have other rating scales like the Neiman-Patrick scales. We have MMSE. We have a lot of so-called question answers that people can answer, and we can give them a rating of 0 to 5 and then tabulate and say that this person is on this scale depressed. But there are a lot of online scales that anyone can do a self-evaluation and do that. But please see what URL you are visiting, because there are a lot of fly-by-wire self-styled psychologists who try to, put out scales, and there are a lot of so-called Facebook games which test out your who do you look out like, and all those type of things. So are you depressed today? Are you suicidal today? When will you die? And all this type of things are going on also. So you please pick it up with a pinch of salt and use your discretion to choose something that is .edu, Stanford.edu or Rice.edu or something there, which takes you to the psychological department, or you could probably visit the who.int, wherein you have got scales which can give you a self test for you to know whether you're depressed. Such scales are also available for addiction, anxiety, quality of life, and so on and so forth. Do I answer your question, Aniket?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So then there is another question by Hasna. Yeah, ma'am.
Can I ask on question? Hello.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, Shanti. Yes, Shanti.
Yes. I wanted to ask you regarding the medicines which you said that for antidepressant, whether does it have side effects if the patient is a heart patient?
Yeah, we've got antidepressants that are heart safe also, Shanti.
Okay, that is my question number one. Question number two is that during the depression, how we can find that, for example, if I have some problem, if I go into myself, is it called depression?
What do you mean by going into yourself?
Not moving with anyone, sitting alone, sitting in one corner and not interested in anything to do.
And how long does this state of mind remain with you?
Maybe a day or two.
So that's called as the mood swing.
Okay.
That's a mood swing. So if you have this mood swings time and again, then probably you'll have a disorder which we call as the bipolar spectrum, wherein you have good days and you have got bad days. Now all of us are moody. The boss comes and scolds me for no fault of mine. I come home and I'm moody. I'm angry. But sometimes sleeping over it and next day morning, you're a different person. But sometimes if it's very much personalized, it also depends on how you have taken what the boss has said. And that may prolong it for 3-4 days. But when we say depression, it is to last every day from morning to evening. The same way, the gloom should continue for at least continuously for 15 days or more. Then you could say that you're depressed.
Yes, doctor.
So I
Thank
answered
you.
you, Shanti? Yeah.
Yes, doctor. Thank you very much.
All right. Rosh Faria, are you there? Is there a comment? You had a question here.
Sir, there is a question from Siddharth Naik. He is asking whether if a person is always cynical, negative and makes excuses, cannot take decisions and claims that he has accomplished XYZ, but his father or parents or maybe someone, sibling or spouse held him back. Is it depression that he's asking?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. It's probably not depression. It's probably what we call as an adjustment disorder.
Okay.
It's an adjustment. See, feeling sad because of a discussion is normal. I mean, if I have a difference of opinion between somebody and I feel sad about it, then it's an adjustment problem at that point of time. It's not like, depressive depression. There was this question from Roy Matthew. Roy, are you online? Roy has a question.
Yeah.
Says that
Yeah,
we passed out
Roy
in
is asking,
COVID time.
sir. Yeah, we passed out in COVID-19 era, and most of us are having stress and fear of
Stress
no
and
jobs
fear.
in the industry.
No
How do
jobs.
we cope up with such? Yeah. How do we cope up with such situation?
I don't know, Roy. I really don't know, because this is the problem that everybody faces. It's a problem in various industries, like the hotel industry, the manufacturing sector. Everyone is being laid off and stuff like that. I frankly don't have an answer, Roy. I think we'll have to hold our hands and try and see what other talents we have. And we'll have to, just this year try and learn to survive by doing some things or the other. And let me tell you, Roy, here, you know what? Let's fend for ourselves for this next few months. Maybe try and do even menial things that might not look like a profession, but might give us some sort of earning some way or the other in the right direction. So I might not be looking for a job right now, but I might be looking for an occupation to keep yourself mentally occupied, to keep some money rolling. You have a brilliant mind, open it up. Don't lock it into your job and say that I passed out to be an engineer and I have no job. Maybe something you'll have to take up to, tide over this crisis, and something you have to take up as an occupation. I know of people who are going back to their roots and taking up farming, doing hydroponics, taking online lectures, learning a new skill, getting back and doing a lot of things. So who knows, Roy, you might suddenly discover a new person in you, and your degree might not really help you in COVID times. What will help you is a calm mind and seeking an occupation to, put food on the table, so to say.
Okay, okay. So, sir, I think we will go for about 15 more minutes and then we can wind up. So, if anyone else has a question, then they may ask their questions respectively.
Hasna was asking me a question during this
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, Hasna is asking, during this time we have a lot of spare time. So eventually we end up overthinking about many things. So how do we avoid overthinking as it may sometime end with stress?
Okay, Hasna, imagine a glass under the tap, and the tap is then put on. What happens to the gas? Why am I getting a boom? I'm getting a feedback.
Yeah, that was because I think Priya had her mic on. Now you can try.
All right. So, Hasna, my answer to your question is, we have spare time, and if you feel that you have spare time, it's time for you to try and look into yourself and find out what your talent is. Maybe you're good at singing, good at dancing. There are online platforms for that. Maybe you're going to sharpen a new talent. Maybe you're going to find a new talent in you. So I don't think there can be a spare, you cannot use your spare time in the right possible way. But then you have to attempt to search within yourself, because we cannot go out and search in COVID times. It's not really safe. But pick up a hobby. I'm sure you'll do well in that, so that you divert your mind onto something that you like doing, you love doing, you feel excited doing, and you will not overthink. Is that okay, Hasna? All right.
Doctor, can I can I ask one more question?
Yeah,
Hello?
yeah, Shanti. Yeah, Shanti.
Yeah. Now, what happened during this Corona or post-Corona period? We are going to have online classes,
Yeah.
and there is not going to be any interpersonal relationship between the teacher and the students, because what happened during in the actual classroom, we will be meeting the students, and they will bring their anxieties, fears, and we have a direct connection. But with this
Yeah.
online classes, it's going to be maybe they will be learning, but there's going to be chaos mentally. So how to deal, because we are not going to deal with the students directly.
I have no answer. Education is become one of the biggest issues world over, and we really don't know. I've got a patient who came to me the other day, severely depressed, is not very economically sound. He said that I just have one smartphone and I've got two children, and I need to carry that phone because I'm a supervisor in some industry. I have no answer, Shanti, because how do you provide laptops to people, especially in an economically weaker section, where each laptop is going to cost you 35,000, and probably the internet connection will put you back for another 5,000 rupees a month. For 3 months. So how do you go about it? I have no answer. I really don't know how things are unless the COVID settles down and children come out and be able to educate. I really don't feel online classes is the answer, is the way forward. Because children, what about practicals? How are children going to do practicals? How do you know that how are you going to give exams? How are you going to take orals? I mean, we won't have that human touch anymore for some time, I feel. So let's see how it goes. I mean, your guess is as good as mine.
Thank you, doctor.
Yeah.
There's a
Sir,
small
Hasna-
question by Dr. Srinivasan. Maybe we could take that.
Yeah.
Are there
Rahul,
any
sir.
age groups, careers, genders more susceptible to depression? Professor Srinivasan, whether he's there, I don't know, but maybe you could take this.
No, everyone is susceptible to depression. We can diagnose depression as early as 6 to 7 years in age, and it goes on perpetually until a person passes away. There's no age gap, but many depressions are found between the ages of 18 to 35. The depression, the illness is found most commonly between this age group, probably because this is the age group of performance. This is the age group of stress. Not that people are not stressful beyond 50 or 55, but if there is a family history of depression and you are supposed to have depression, you probably have your first episode around between 18 to 35 years. And that's going to be the depression, the illness. Whereas the stress-related depression can happen to anyone. So, Dr. Srinivasan, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. I got it.
Right.
Alright.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's an interesting
adding to
question
that-
from Rosh Faria. I'll take that up because it's very interesting.
yeah.
How does a person respond to someone who is getting a panic attack? Wonderful question, Rosh. What is important for you to do is to identify that it's panic attack. A person who is having a panic attack will feel that life is going to end. I can't breathe. So you loosen up his clothes, put him there, and tell him to start having control on his breathing. If he is breathing very fast and open, slowly you'll find that he is getting into a twirl. That's because you're washing out carbon dioxide and your body is going into what is called as carpopedal spasms, like this. And then in Konkani, we'll say them, that sort of thing. That's because you are doing a lot of shallow breathing. The way to take care of that is to push the person to do deep breathing, take a deep breath until you can, and give it out until you can. And in your mind, feel that you're letting out your stress through the breath that you're leaving. Do this 10 times with a 10 times break. That's one. But if you're getting a very fast type of breathing, breathe into a plastic bag. Because as the carbon dioxide is washing in, you're getting into something called as acidosis. So then you have to put a plastic bag and breathe into your bag. That sort of thing. So once you get that, you feel better. And of course, you could probably take a small anti-anxiety medication, which any doctor could probably prescribe to you. But learn meditation, probably pranayama might help you. And it doesn't have any side effects, so you might as well try and do that. But then the root cause of your panic attack, you have to come to us and find out what's the root cause so that we can help you take care of that. Does that answer your question, Rosh Faria?
Yes, Rosh says yes. We also have a student here, Jamirov,
Yes,
who is
Jamirov.
from Uzbekistan.
Yes,
So I would just want Zamirov to say something because he's representing the foreign students here. So Zamirov, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
So why don't you just say
Yes.
something? Say anything that you feel like. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Jamir from Uzbekistan. So I'm living in hostel. Sometimes I feel alone. I want to talk with some friends, but because of this lockdown, I can't see my friends. That's why sometimes, not every day, but I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
But thank you
you're
for this webinar. Yeah. So I'm listening all this.
Jamirov, what you're saying is perfectly right. We are all feeling imprisoned. We are all feeling caught up in this so-called lockdown. And luckily,
Yes.
Goa is not really in lockdown, but in unlock phase 1. So maybe in a short while, in lockdown phase 2, as the PM will announce shortly, we may be able to meet each other in social distancing. But thanks to WhatsApp video calls and these chat platforms, I really wouldn't know what we would have done if we didn't have smartphones or we didn't have the internet. Because I don't think back in the century during the Spanish flu, which is something very similar to what is happening right now, there was no internet. And the internet is making so much of a difference to all of us. So, Jamanov, I think you should chat with your friends and probably do some video chatting. I think that will be helpful. And think about listening to some sort of alpha music when you feel alone. And think of these lovely valleys that you have in Uzbekistan. And think of the family, your favorite places. You might feel better. Right, son?
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Sir, I had a question related to what Rahul sir had asked a while ago, which was about age group. There is also another perception that, many people think that depression is only affected to the privileged class. So, can you throw some light on that, sir?
85% of patients who visit the district hospital in the Department of Psychiatry come from not the elite class, come from the middle class, the lower middle class, the lower class. I really wouldn't like to call them class because psychiatry sees no classes. We see people from all walks of life, and this so-called man-made class is. I mean, does COVID affect a particular class? I mean, COVID has shown us our place, didn't it? It showed us that it saw no religion. It affected everyone who is there, and similarly, depression is the same way. It affects everyone. It's just a thing that is in our mind that this can happen to us. But I found depression in the richest of the rich and the poorest of the poor. If economics has anything to do with it, it happens to all human beings around us, all of us.
Right, sir. Anyone else have a quick question, or we just have 7 minutes left and then we'll wind up the session?
I'm just going to the chat to see if we have missed anything.
Yeah. There is one question by Norman Fernandez, who is also a chairperson of Pinnacle. He's asking,
Right.
he has a case wherein he knows that one of his friend is, something wrong with him. He smokes and he drinks, and he says that he even tried to approach him, but somehow he don't want to open up. So how do we,
We have to wait. We have to keep supporting Norman. We have to keep supporting, understanding his mindset. We have to keep supporting. Because once he gets into a little bit of trusting thing, because what happens when a person is self-doubting, no? The trust goes out of the window. So we need to look at a way. We need to look at a way of supporting him in some way. Sometimes it's difficult for people, like I said, to come out and say that, Norman, will you help me? I'm feeling very down and out. We'll have to wait. We have to give people time to come.
At what point sir, we can approach that person, like
At any point,
point in life?
At any point of time. At any point of time. See, if somebody is, you see somebody slipping down a slope, there's no point. If you decide to help, we won't say that help kotta. That's not what we are going to say. He's a friend, he's slipping. We'll try and help him at any point of time. It doesn't matter.
I tried to approach one, two times, but he denied to tell me. But on the face, I couldn't make out. But then I told him, a day will come where you will want to tell me, but I may be busy in something like.
No, I understand your point, Norman. Well taken. But the thing that I want to impress upon you is that if he has got a way, maybe somebody else can do. 2, 3 of you all can come and say that, Baba, kya re? Kya mare? Bosya mare? Uloya mare? Kinzala to asa natlalo mare? We're finding a change in you. Ask his relatives, maybe his brother or something from his family. Find out if that you all are the only ones observing, or his family is also observed that there's a change in his behavior. So all of us have to come. It's a teamwork because it's very important to save that life. So anybody and everybody can be helpful. I'm very happy you're trying to help someone in need. Very good. Well done, Norman.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Just a small point.
So last,
Yeah.
Can I just have a small point? I mean, has a reference to what has been in the news, and I'm sure many of the youngsters can relate to the question. The latest case of the actor. Now, of course, class was not an issue in this case. I mean, now there are all kinds of things going on social media as to this is the culprit, that is the culprit. My own take would be that I think for us as observers, I mean, focus of the discussion should actually have been that, well, the person was depressed. What could he have done to, or what could the support system for him have been? Rather than that, the discussion has shifted entirely to fixing the blame. So, I mean, that is leading to a very different kind of a discourse in the society. So,
Yeah, Professor
yeah.
Professor Rahul, I agree with you. Whatever has been said of this particular case, I have these two observations. You cannot actually understand what that person goes through unless you're wearing his own chappals. Unless I'm wearing his own chappals. So, because if I'm in his shoes, I can understand what exactly he's probably going through. Now, he's an intellectual. He's a very well-read person. He has money to his side. He has name to his side. He has fame to his side. He has friends to his side. And we would say that why the hell did he do that? Why the hell did he commit it? There are various angles to it. My only study in this case is that there was even help available for him. And if I understand right from the newspaper reports, he was seen by a psychiatrist and prescribed medication. But then at the end of it, a person should be motivated to follow the prescription. And as an adult, he has the choice under the Mental Health Care Act not to take medication, not to refuse, and to refuse medication or intervention. If that has been a decision, then there is there's little reason for us to think what happened, why happened. And human beings are very funny. We always require answers to questions, we always look for closure. Every one of his friends are looking for some closure. कि इसकी वजह से ये हुआ, उसकी वजह से वो हुआ. My only hurt is that as much as all of us together are talking about this subject, we have put in place self-help groups, we have put in place suicide helplines, we have put in place psychiatry, we have done webinars, we have done so many things. But at some point of time, a person who is in distress should reach out. No? They should reach out. I think all the friends tried. But then sometimes it's a very, very, very highly intelligent mind taking a very quirky turn. That also could be a possibility. We don't know. We keep our cards open and we say that if only is the answer that comes to my mind. If only this would happen, if only that would happen. But at that point of time when the person takes that decision, it's that moment. It's that moment that happens. It's just a split moment. It's an impulse that happens. And then the person, many of the times we will come with us with attempted suicide because of some horrific questions that is there, situation that is there in his life. And we are able to save them and they say that, boss, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. But it was in the spare of the moment. I really got mad at this point of time. And yes, they're right. They lose judgment at that point of time. We have a concept called as temporary insanity or impulsivity. All of us have temporary insanity or impulsivity. And we do foolish things at some time. And this is a tragic foolish thing, if at all we could say that. But then each one for his place, everyone is responsible for each welfare. Yes, Professor, anything else you would like to add?
No, not at all. And I think since you've mentioned that suicide prevention, and incidentally, I mean, for the audience, that has been one of the prime areas in which Dr. Dhume has worked on. So certainly, I mean, a topic on which we will soon like to meet at some point of time again. Yeah.
Right, sure.
Any further questions, Ramarai?
Well past our time, so I think we can wind up the session.
I hope I hope my interaction with you was useful and helpful, and I'm very thankful to all of you for giving me this platform. And it's very interesting to try and exchange views in a very discussive manner rather than have a lecture. So please feel free in contacting, and if I can assign time, I will definitely will. So thank you to Professor Rahul Tripathi and to Ram Rai Naik and to Norman and all the office bearers of the Pinnacle Group and the Directorate of the Department of Political Science and Directorate of Foreign Students. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much,
Thank
sir,
you, mine.
for being with us.
Yeah, so on behalf of Ram Rai, Pinnacle and his team, I thank you because it has been a trying time and is for you as well. As far as I'm concerned, I've always found Dr. Dhome to be very accessible. He has a particular way and style of interacting. So I've lived up to your style very much.
Okay.
As students, we have listened to the professor's lecture, but it was very, very interactive. So thank you very much. Ramra, any final thanks you want to say?
Yeah, just one question to Dr. Dhome, sir. Sir, how do we, if someone wants to approach you, how do they approach you?
I work in the district hospital, North Goa at Azulo Hospital in Mapsa. And my OPD days are Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. These days we work only 50% of time with 50% of load because the second half of the day we are busy cleaning the hospital so that it's sanitized to take in patients. So we are doing OPDs from 9:30 to 12:30 Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And evenings we do other COVID duties. So if anybody wants to meet me, they are most welcome. They will be screened first and then they can come to OPD 34.